Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. We begin today with important news for growers of raspberries and other soft fruits. Here's UVM Extension fruit and berry specialist Vern Grubinger.
Spotted-winged Drosophila, or SWD, is a little fruit fly, not unlike what you would find in your kitchen when you have banana peels or other items in your compost. The difference is this fruit fly has a saw-like egg-laying appendage that lets it puncture intact ripe fruit and lay an egg in it. It can't get into very thick-skinned fruits like apples or even softer fruits that have a tougher skin like a tomato, but it really gets going on raspberries and blueberries and fruits like that. So the crops of greatest concern are fall raspberries because SWD tends to build up throughout the season, the late maturing blueberries, and things like peaches and cherries, which we don't have that much of in Vermont, but some people do grow them. We don't want to scare anybody about this new pest, but we do want you to be informed about what cultural practices can be effective in protecting your fruit crops against it. Just like other insect pests that growers and gardeners have managed for many years, it takes attention to detail and knowing the life cycle of these organisms, but it is possible to grow the vulnerable fruits in Vermont, and we're going to get even better at managing this pest as time goes on. This is a roll of insect netting. Many growers and gardeners are familiar with something called floating row covers, which has been used to protect crops against insects and also to create a warmer, more humid growing environment. You can use a floating row cover over your vulnerable crops, but insect netting is a little different in that it's somewhat more durable and it's specifically designed with a small mesh to keep the pests out. In the case of spotted-winged Drosophila, the mesh has to be smaller than 1 millimeter squared. So make sure and get the specifications of any material before you buy it so that it really will exclude the pest. Obviously, it has to go on before the fruits start to ripen and the pest is attracted to the crop. You don't want to put it on any earlier because you want to have pollinators get access to the flowers so that you'll get fruit, but delaying after fruit starts to ripen runs the risk of having the pest already in there laying eggs. Take, for example, these blueberries right here. They're still immature. They're green. There's nothing ripening, so there's no risk of infestation yet from SWD. It's only once they first start to ripen that you want to get the netting on, and after harvest, you want to take the netting off as soon as possible so it doesn't photodegrade and it'll last many years. As soon as any berries start to ripen, the netting should be on to prevent the spotted-winged Drosophila from attacking fruit. When you put the netting up, it's important to make sure that all of the edges and the entranceway are sealed, because any little opening will allow the pest to go in and defeat the purpose of having the net. If you have a structure that's been used for bird netting, for example, it may be suitable for hanging up the insect netting. And in fact, if you haven't had bird netting, you may get double duty out of the insect netting by also keeping the birds off. So although it's an expensive investment up front, if you take care of the netting and it lasts many years, you'll be paid back in a lot of sound fruit that would have otherwise been lost. The design of traps for spotted-winged Drosophila has been evolving very fast as researchers learn more about how to capture this pest and what it's attracted to. This is the current trap design that extension folks in New England are using to trap for spotted-winged Drosophila. Sometimes trapping is done just to monitor the population, but it's possible that using enough traps, perhaps one in every blueberry bush or every other, or one every 20 or 30 feet, we don't know yet, it could be possible to actually trap out the spotted-winged Drosophila and reduce the damage to the fruit. These traps are something that anybody can make because they use readily available materials like plastic red cups from the supermarket and black electrical tape from the hardware store, as well as wire and another little cup that's used often for dressings at delis and things like that. The idea here is that the pest is attracted to this black on red combination. And by drilling 1/8 inch holes, you allow this small insect to get in while keeping larger pests out, or larger bugs that may be attracted to the bait. The bait, in this case, is a little solution that's fermenting. So it's made from a combination of whole wheat flour, water, sugar, and yeast. So it's the yeast odors that really attract the pest, but you have to give it something to live on, and so it continues to give off odors. By putting it in a little cup like this that's had a hole cut out of the top and screen mesh put in, the pest can't actually get into the bait, so the bait stays uncontaminated and continues to ferment well, and the pest is then attracted to the second part of the bait, which is a drowning solution. So inside the cup, about an inch or so in the bottom, you would place a mixture of inexpensive red wine and apple cider vinegar, roughly 50-50. That goes in. It's also attractive to the spotted-winged Drosophila, but not as much as the yeast, so the combination together is a very powerful bait. By putting the little cup inside the big cup and then sealing it up so rainwater doesn't get in and fouling it, and hanging it in the bush near the fruit, preferably in a shady spot, because when it's in the sunshine the bugs don't tend to go to it as much. This is one way to try and reduce the amount of spotted-winged Drosophila that attack your fruit. This is definitely a challenging pest, but a lot of extension and research personnel are working on ways to manage it so that commercial growers and homeowners can continue to have an abundance of blueberries, raspberries, and other soft fruits. For UVM Extension, this is Vern Grubinger.
For our next segment, we head to the UVM Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources, where Rebecca Gollin tells us about the Eco Machine.
We have taro, also known as elephant ear. We have ginger. We have Egyptian papyrus. We have canna lily.
Matt Beam likes to be around plants when he works. It makes sense because most of the time he's thinking about ways to put those plants to work for people.
These are all enormously important plants throughout history. Obviously, papyrus is known for making paper, the first paper. Taro is the root is almost like a potato. It's a food staple in parts of the world. I'm not necessarily advocating that we start eating things out of the Eco Machine, but the point is that we can grow useful things in Eco Machines.
The Eco Machine in question is one of the green features in the newly renovated George D. Aiken Center at the University of Vermont. It's designed to treat the building's wastewater for reuse, which is a lot more complicated than just growing the right plants.
The Eco Machine is basically using biological organisms to treat the waste in the building. So we don't have to send any waste into the sewer system, into the city sewer system, which ultimately ends up part of it into the lake. So we're doing our part in kind of recycling water. Once that water's cleaned by the Eco Machine, we use it to reflush toilets. It comes back to the Eco Machine, gets cleaned again, and is reused.
The Eco Machine is the final result of many years of collaboration and planning.
I worked with probably 2 years worth of students in John's ecological design studio class, as well as a lot of John's other master's students and John himself, his company, and their engineers, and worked our way through it.
Beam, who started at UVM as an art major, found his way to the Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources, where he wound up with an ecology degree. Along the way, he met UVM professor John Todd, who's a pioneer in the field of ecological design. Beam came back to UVM for his master's degree, which turned out to be designing this Eco Machine.
And one of the neat features of these particular racks is that the plant support is built into it. We try to take the wisdom of nature, and one of the biggest wisdoms of nature is biodiversity.
That biodiversity begins with the microorganisms that form the base of the whole system.
We spin a whole food web off of it, and those become the base of an ecosystem, the food base, basically. You grow plankton, you grow algae, you grow higher plants. You even add oligochaete worms and other invertebrates.
Biodiversity will also help the Eco Machine to bounce back from shock if something unexpected gets put down the drains. Otherwise, the system is designed to roll with the punches, so to speak.
We can pop this, and we can raise or lower the overflow, and that'll change the water level in all 3 of these tanks. The water that comes in here it's from the septic tank. It's been sitting there and going anaerobic, and it's really gross. It smells like what you would imagine wastewater from a bunch of people would smell like.
That wastewater moves through a series of tanks that begin to break it down.
It just settles out the solids and it separates the fats, oils, and greases. So it draws water from the middle, solids settle out the bottom, fats, oils, and greases at the top. And basically from that point on, you're just dealing with soluble pollutants and soluble nutrients.
That process continues, moving the water through even more tanks and more biology until it's clean. Then it gets reused and the process starts again. But that's not quite the end of the story.
Right now we have a real disconnect. We're not fitting well into our environment. We generate our fertilizer by digging up phosphate rock, which we're running out of. And we also generate it by getting nitrogen from natural gas. At the same time, we're polluting all of our waterways. Phosphorus is a huge problem in the lake, and we're running out of phosphorus for agriculture. So we need to close this loop. We need to fit within our environment a little better, and we need to start figuring out how to mine phosphorus.
Now that the machine is in place, there's research to be done.
We'll be looking at nitrogen, we'll be looking at BOD, we'll be looking at phosphorus, which I'm sure our viewers by now have heard about phosphorus from all these shows. But we're also looking at some of these emerging pollutants. So caffeine goes right through us, estrogen in birth control pills. The amount of, we don't even know the names of most of them. Thousands and thousands of new chemicals are coming out in health and beauty products every year. And no one's monitoring for them, no one's testing, and no one's really sure what they're doing out in the environment. We really want to look and see how well eco-machines can remove some of these endocrine disruptors and some of these also emerging pollutants that aren't normally monitored for.
There's a world of questions out there waiting to be answered by the world that's been created here in the eco-machine. Beam, who finished his master's degree in 2010 and now works at UVM, is looking forward to answering those questions, all the while taking his cues from nature.
Nature is incredibly good at not wasting energy.
The new Aiken Center at the University of Vermont is paving the way to a more environmentally friendly future and will continue to provide research opportunities that benefit Vermonters and the environment. In Burlington, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
In the time we have remaining, we're going to get up close with honeybees in this visit to the Champlain Valley apiaries in Middlebury.
Well, this is full of honey, but the top two weren't. This is all brood, cat brood. It's not honey. Those are baby bees. She's coming out. She's being born right now. There she is. She just emerged. I came home to take over the business from my father in 2004. And of course I worked in the bees in high school and things, and throughout my life being a third generation beekeeper. Oh, there's lots of skill to raising bees. They're complex, and you have to make a lot of judgment calls. There's the queen. You see her? She's the mother of all these bees. They probably don't appreciate the disruption. I'm the largest employer in the state of Vermont, you know. Got millions of employees. Yeah, I got a great office. That's for sure.
For a video copy of today's program, call toll-free 1-888-ATF-3430. Across the Fence is brought to you as a public service by University of Vermont Extension and WCAX-TV.